Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
President Trump was charged because the evidence established that he willfully broke the law, the very laws he took an oath to uphold. Grand juries in 2 separate districts reached this conclusion based on his actions, as alleged in the indictments they returned. Rather than accept his defeat in the 2020 election, President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results and prevent the lawful transfer of power. After leaving office in January of 21, President Trump illegally kept classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago social club and repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. Highly sensitive national security information was held in a ballroom and a bathroom. I stand by my decisions as special counsel, including the decision to bring charges against President Trump. Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in criminal activity.
That was former special counsel Jack Smith at yesterday's House Judiciary Committee hearing. We'll get to that in just a second. We also have Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio with us today. We'll chat with him in a little while. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So a lot happened this week. Let's start off with that hearing yesterday. My biggest takeaway is that we have video. We know what happened. We saw it. We know what went down. But yet these Republican congressmen and women, they come into this hearing, and it's as if they just have one job, and that is to lie, rewrite history, protect Donald Trump. Let's play this clip.
Mr. Smith, I want you to have the utmost confidence in what you did. You did everything right. Harry Dunn, Danny Hodges, Sergeant Cannell, Mike Fanone, they did everything right. These guys, my Republican colleagues, are a joke. They're wrong. History will harshly judge them. So I want you to lean in today. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You did everything right, sir. And these guys are so lucky they're not under oath, because they would have to tell you what they really think of Trump. They call him crooked. They call him cruel. They call him a scumbag. I've heard you all say it. You're lucky you're not under Trump, but when the lights go on and the cameras are on, you're tiny, you're small, you shrink. Everyone remembers Matt Gaetz coming over here after a committee hearing. He would laugh at how stupid he thought Trump was. This is all a show. And Mr. Smith, you're just the latest act that they've brought in. But they can't erase what happened on January 6th because we saw it with our own eyes.
That was California Congressman Eric Swalwell, and amen, brother. That is the truth. These guys are just weak, feckless cowards. You know what else we saw with our own eyes that day? We saw Republicans like Josh Hawley running for their lives. We saw them hiding in the chamber, crouched on the floor. We saw them terrified. You know what else we saw with our eyes? We saw people like Lindsey Graham later that day saying, that's it, I'm done, I'm out, this is it, I can't take it anymore. This is horrible. We saw Mitch McConnell condemn it. We saw a lot of them condemn it. But then the minutes passed, the hours passed, and then it was time for that midnight certification vote, and one by one, they all marched in lockstep right behind the insurrectionist. And ever since, in the past 5 years, it's all they've been doing. Rewriting history, changing the narrative, protecting Donald Trump, because they are absolute cowards.
Well, what we saw is the new governance by entertainment, which is what Trump sort of brought into being in 2016. And it has nothing to do with reality. It's what we saw in Davos, what we see everywhere. It's all entertainment to them. It's what are the ratings going to be? What clip are we going to get on Fox News so that we can see Jim Jordan with the G with no jacket on because he's really, really tough and riled up.
Well, that shows that you're working hard. If you take your jacket off,
yeah,
you're working hard.
Totally. He is absolutely shameless, but it's perfect for their TV channels. And now they have streaming channels and they have their Facebook
they
pages.
get their clips. Rolling up the sleeves also. That's like you're like a workaholic if you do that.
Well, he did that later, I think, and you can't do that right away because you have to show how you're really working up. Yeah.
It was really such an ugly display. Here's a guy who's dedicated his life to the rule of law, to doing the right thing, to trying to lock up the bad guys. And they just went in with really the ultimate goal of impugning his credibility, impugning his character. Every question they asked him was procedural in nature. It's almost like if there was a shooting death, like a cop burst into a house and shot someone, but the cop shot a guy who the home video cameras literally show him shooting his wife in the head. Unprovoked, just complete murder, an abusive husband. And then during trial, they attack the cop because, like, when did you last clean your gun? How much sleep did you have the night before? It's like, we saw the fucking video. And it's one thing to do that. Okay, let's just say Jack Smith is whatever it is they accuse him of. You could still do that and acknowledge what we have all seen with our eyes, right?
100%.
One doesn't
100%.
negate the other, but they don't care about what happened that day, clearly, because all they're trying to do is change the history of what happened that day.
1/3 of this country is not going to change their mind. We don't need 1/3 of this country to change their mind. We need to be very clear with 2/3 of this country. And Jack Smith holds an incredible amount of power.
Yeah. To me, I think it's going to backfire. I don't know what the point of this was. Why put Jack Smith, who is literally like out of central casting for like G-Man, prosecutor. What motivation to those people, Jan, the ones you're talking about, not the ones who think, there's space lasers in the sky, but, just people who may have voted for Obama. This time they voted for Trump. Like those guys, the independents, the people that we know we can get back because we had them once before. They see Jack Smith. They're not going to believe all these conspiracies that the Republicans were trying to throw at him yesterday. The man stood his ground, never lost his cool, composed, honest, factual, and just defending the rule of law. And I think that most Americans who watch that, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, they saw it.
I think your analogy is really apt about the person shooting their wife, because really the Republicans in the House and the Senate are not functioning in any oversight capacity whatsoever. They function as Trump's defense attorney, just as a defense attorney would go to court to defend this murderer.
That's
in
right.
your analogy.
That's
and
right.
they would, try to pick apart the policeman. And that is a defense attorney's job. It's just not Congress's job.
No. Well, we know who it's the job of the Department of Justice now. It's the job of the Attorney General.
They literally employ his defense attorneys.
And it's been Congress's job. So he has them all on like his payroll. But not one of them indicated that they believe that something horrible happened that day that Trump might have had some hand in. And that's astounding given all the receipts we have. Crazy.
Is it really astounding at this point?
Well, it is that you believe that there are human beings on this planet who can actually do that. No matter how many times you see them do it, still makes it astounding. It's still shocking that they do that.
This is a House of Representatives that passed a law several years ago to put a plaque up to commemorate the officers that defended the Capitol. And until just about 2 weeks ago, they refused to put it up until the Senate passed something in order to make it happen.
Yeah, well, thanks for reminding me of something else that pissed me off royally yesterday, and that was when these Republicans started blaming the D.C. cops for January 6th.
Yep.
And Michael Fanone, who we got to get back on this podcast, the best moment of that hearing,
Oh, yes.
he coughs and says, like, fuck you, like, fuck you. I mean, my God, these people ran for their fucking lives, and cops like Harry Dunn and Michael Fanone stood between them and these rioters who were shouting, where's Nancy? Hang Mike Pence. How on earth are you so soulless that you will sit in a hearing room near the same chamber where you almost died in your mind, and these people protected you. Now you're blaming them for this insurrection? Get the fuck out of here.
And that's why I actually agree with you in terms of the fact that it will backfire, because you can't say that 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals 3,072,000.
Right.
It just does. It can't compute like that.
No, and people don't like being told, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
And when one day there's a different Congress and there's a different president, there will be hearings.
Oh, yeah.
And these representatives will be held accountable for this horrendous performance.
We will likely be sitting here a year from now talking about the hearings that the majority Democrat Party have been holding. Let's talk about the other insane thing that happened this week, and that is Davos. Donald Trump goes to Davos. And the world was sitting on pins and needles, just waiting to see how unhinged he's going to be, how threatening he's going to be, how dangerous he's going to sound. And what happened? Taco Boy chickened out again. Because that's what Taco Boy does. Taco Boy is a strong man when he is sitting on his gold-plated toilet and tapping away with those tiny little fingers and pushing out his big, strong man tweets. That's when he is his toughest. With the exception of the infamous Oval Office meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, put this guy in front of his opponents face to face, he'll be friends with anybody.
That's the art of the deal.
Yeah, it's the art of the squeal. So he goes to Davos, and he starts speaking, and it goes on for like, I don't know, an hour and 15, 20 minutes, and he is rambling about all kinds of shit. Windmills, God, I mean, it is insane. He was so unhinged, so incoherent. So let me give you a few highlights. These were the most important things to me because these are the substantive things. We could talk forever about how Trump sounded crazy and unhinged and babbling. He does that every time he opens his mouth. These were the consequential things he said. He said next time Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney speaks, he should remember that Canada exists because of the U.S. Really? I majored in history in college.
You missed that.
I guess I was out that day. He, of course, backed off his threat, as we're talking about, of invading Greenland, but he demanded it nonetheless. He said he gotta have it, and he called it a quote cold and poorly located piece of ice.
Sorry, that was just hilarious.
Which just happens to be a piece of ice I'm obsessed with. I gotta have, and it is crucial to our national security. But it's in the middle of fucking nowhere, and it's a piece of ice.
But it's really big.
Yeah,
on the map.
And then he made this really big threat. This was the biggest. I mean, I was sitting in my living room, and I was like, oh shit. I'm like, I got goosebumps. I was so scared myself. He said, look, I'm not gonna invade. I'm not gonna use military. Okay? And then he jokes. He's like, ooh, everybody's happy now. I'm not gonna use military, but I'm gonna ask for it. And you can do the right thing and give it to me. Because if you don't give it to me, I'll remember.
We can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Now, the easy way is if you give this to me. The hard way is if you don't, and I remember. Oh, Trump's going to remember. Oh, I'm so scared. Let's play this clip.
Well, we have a concept of a deal. I think it's going to be a very good deal for the United States, also for them. And we're going to work together on something having to do with the Arctic as a whole, but also Greenland. And it has to do with the security, great security, strong security, and other things.
Just think about what he just said. We don't have a deal. We don't even have like a framework of a deal. We got a concept of a deal. A concept of a deal, the details of which I can't tell you, but they will be coming at some point in the future. Just think about that. All the bluster, all the threats, all the or else, all the easy way, hard way, all the tariffs, the 10% tariffs going to take place on February 1st if you don't support my plan to acquire Greenland. All of that shit for nothing. Absolutely nothing. Upset our NATO allies, upset our allies all over the world. All of it for absolutely nothing. We have a fucking deal with them that's been in place for like 75 years. We can do whatever we want there. They basically said to us, you can do whatever you want. He goes to Davos. He ends up humiliating himself. He's a fucking embarrassment to this country, embarrassment to himself. But according to the administration, it was a great speech. Let's play this clip.
I've done more for NATO than anybody, and I see all this stuff, but NATO has to treat us fairly, too. The big fear I have with NATO is we spend tremendous amounts of money with NATO, and I know we'll come to their rescue, but I just really do question whether or not they'll come to ours.
Okay, that was the other thing that just made me want to put my fist into the television. And that is Article 5 of NATO, which is you attack one of us, you're attacking all of us. That has been invoked once. Just once. And guess when that was? It was after 9/11, when our NATO allies came to our defense. Sent their troops to Afghanistan with our troops. And many of them died. Denmark, on a per capita basis, lost the most troops. They lost about 45 soldiers defending us. How the hell does he stand up in front of the European leaders, in front of NATO, and say NATO has never done anything for us? He also said we won World War II on our own. Sure, France and Great Britain and Russia would have a lot to say about that. That was just so outrageous. The insult to our allies from World War II, the insult to our NATO partners, just unconscionable.
I don't know that they'd be there for us. They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. I mean, our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland. So Iceland's already cost us a lot of money. But that dip is peanuts compared to what it's gone up.
I just want to say he didn't actually say Iceland, apparently.
He didn't. He never said Iceland. I mean, even Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, when asked by a reporter why he said Iceland, she snapped and said, he did not. He said that Greenland is a piece of ice.
That's what I heard.
And there was also something else which I thought was just completely off the rails, unconscionable on so many levels. And that was he invited Vladimir Putin onto his bullshit board of peace. Now, this is the same Putin who, unprovoked, invaded a sovereign nation, which is a democratic ally of the United States, has been waging war against Ukraine for years, seizing part of its land, murdering its citizens, relentlessly bombing its cities and towns for years. This is the Vladimir Putin that Donald Trump invites onto his board of peace. Peace. Emphasis on the word peace. And unfortunately, the world really doesn't trust us anymore. They cannot rely on the United States. And as they should, they're off and creating their own alliances and doing what they got to do to protect their homelands, protect their economies. It is really a shame that that's where we are. I'd like to think that a lot of that can change with a Democrat president and a Democrat Congress. I think a lot of it will change, but it may not. And we don't really know if they're ever able to trust us again, given what's happened now. You know, that what Donald Trump has demonstrated to them is that at any moment in America, a crazy leader could be elected by half the country, and then he can go off and do all kinds of horrible things. And I don't know if they're ever going to want to experiment with that again. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, Jack Smith. His testimony represented the argument he was never allowed to deliver in court, that Trump engaged in criminal activity that undermined democracy and the rule of law. My loser, An ICE memo that allows officers to enter homes without a judicial warrant, usurping guardrails that are enshrined in the Fourth Amendment and have protected American civil liberties for centuries.
My winner is Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney for delivering the strongest rebuke of Trump's America with the best line, "Nostalgia is not a strategy." My loser is the Fourth Amendment, as a leaked memo has disclosed that ICE has now been authorized to enter homes without a judicial warrant, an egregious violation of the Bill of Rights.
My winner, Fed Board Governor Lisa Cook, who appears to be on her way to winning her Supreme Court challenge to Trump's termination. Props to the court's conservative justices. My loser, Lindsay Halligan, who quit as a U.S. attorney after Donald Trump destroyed her reputation and career, as he's done with so many other former personal attorneys. And that gets us to the weekly rant. I want to talk about bullies. Bullies are cowards. They act tough, talk tough, but deep down they're just scared little boys. Take Donald Trump, who speaks loudly and carries a little dick, whose tariff, foreign policy, and military threats have more U-turns than the Jersey Turnpike. How many times have we seen him make these threats?
This will happen, or that will happen, or they better do what I say, or holy hell will break out.
Only to be humiliatingly dialed back the same day, or within a few days or a week or two. Trump changes his threats like I change my boxers. On one day, off the next. So when he talks tough, but then ends up retreating, instead of appearing shamed and humiliated, he and the people around him, the emperor has no clothes crowd, they all go into full-on gaslight mode and present it as an actual victory. Case in point, this utterly embarrassing reversal of both his threat to invade Greenland and his threat to slap new tariffs on the European countries who did not support his wet dream of acquiring the Denmark-controlled territory, or what he calls a piece of ice. So off to Davos he went, after all his big, tough guy wannabe, fake strongman threats. But then, like always, when he was actually face-to-face with his opponents, he folded like a $2 lawn chair, like the coward he truly is. And he sheepishly told the attendees, most of them world leaders and titans of business, after all the manic machismo, that he has no plans to invade Greenland. And in the same day, said there will be no tariffs on the European countries, after all, because he just cut an amazing deal over Greenland. A deal which, according to all experts, gives him and the United States exactly what we've had for the past 75 years.
It's a concept of a deal. We're working on the details, which will all come down the road. We got everything we want.
Well, no, sir, you didn't. You said you wanted to own Greenland, not walk away like a neutered buffoon with the same thing you got on the plane with. The reality is, he went to Davos with his shriveled little knapsack, while European leaders and Canada's Mark Carney showed up with more balls than Dick's Sporting Goods. And they proved that if you stand up to a bully, you can win. When I see that happen, I am of course incredibly inspired. Yet a wave of sadness and jealousy hits also, because I wish the United States was led by someone like Carney, or France's Emmanuel Macron, or the UK's Keir Starmer. Smart, competent, honest, good faith players who carry out their jobs in the best interest of their countries and citizens, instead of the ignorant, incompetent, deranged, self-serving, corrupt, convicted felon, pedophile-protecting, lying sociopath we have. But then that quickly passes. A little smile returns, because I look into the future and I know America will have that kind of leadership again, which is why we all have to strap ourselves in for the roller coaster ride. Stay positive, stay engaged, vote, and make sure everyone we know votes as well. And if we do that, if we do our jobs, we will win the midterms in November and have the presidency we deserve in 2028. And the rule of law and our democracy, once respected around the globe, will again be the protector and defender of our allies as we fight to contain and defeat our enemies. So repeat after me. Donald Trump will not win. We will win. Democracy will win. All right, let's get to Congressman Chris Deluzio. Elected in 2022 and re-elected in 2024, Congressman Chris Deluzio represents Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District, where he serves on the House Armed Services Committee and the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. He is an Iraq war veteran, voting rights attorney, and union organizer. Congressman, welcome into the back room.
Thanks, Andy. Excited to be here.
So the first thing I want to ask you about, obviously, is very topical news. Jack Smith's hearing yesterday. What did you take away from this?
Well, look, two pretty clear conclusions to me. One, he did his job. He followed the facts. He applied the law. This was someone who was a serious and sober-minded prosecutor. And the Republicans who were grilling him are trying to rewrite history, right? They do not want to confront the fact that Donald Trump and lots of folks were willing to try to overthrow the election, the violence that happened on January 6th. They are trying to create a whole new fake narrative about what happened, and they don't really care about who they'll, destroy in the process.
Do you think the folks at home watching take away the fact that Democrats go into that kind of a hearing with the goal of trying to expose the truth? Whereas, to your point, one after another, Republicans want to impugn Jack Smith's character. They want to rewrite history, change that narrative, shamelessly cover up for Trump's seditious actions. I just hope the people at home see that, because they also saw all the videos. They saw the video of what happened on January 6th. They saw Josh Hawley and other Republicans running for their lives. They saw months of Donald Trump lying about the election. They saw on January 6th, people like Lindsey Graham and others saying, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here. And then all of a sudden, we have 5 years of lying and narrative changing. I hope they see that. Do you think they do?
The American people are smart, and these politicians ought to remember that. Despite the fact that Donald Trump seems to use as a loyalty test whether you're willing to say that he, in fact, didn't lose the 2020 election. We know that he did. That tells me more about Donald Trump. And remember, it is a fringe position to think that Donald Trump didn't lose in 2020. That is a fringe view among the American people. And so the message, I think, to these right-wing politicians who are part of this, they are obviously still so afraid of Donald Trump. They are doing everything they can to show their loyalty. They're in a place the American people know is ridiculous. They know it's not true. Again, it's a fringe position. And we all saw with our own eyes what happened on January 6th. You saw it on television. You heard from the Capitol Police and other cops who were there to defend the Capitol and defend our democracy. It was exactly what we all saw, an attempt to use violence to overthrow our government. And Donald Trump was at the center of it. There's no spin or lies or theater in a hearing that can change that fact.
Do you think this was a huge backfire for them to allow this hearing to take place?
We'll see. I think every time the American people are confronted with being reminded of what happened on that day, they are in fact reminded of what happened on that day and understand by huge majorities that this was an effort to overthrow our government.
Yeah.
And then Donald Trump continues talking about and trying to spin the lie that he didn't lose. And so I think every time he opens his mouth or those around him have to say it, it reminds everybody how crazy it is. And you see this even in confirmation hearings of Trump appointees when they're asked who won the 2020 election. They have like a script they say, right? That Joe Biden was certified the winner. They can't even say it without getting the wrath of the White House. It's really weak and pathetic stuff, and it's dangerous too.
Well, I saw one of your colleagues, Republican colleagues, on TV this morning on Morning Joe. And he's a history teacher, and I forget his name. But they said, what would you tell your students about J6? Like, how would you describe what happened? And would you say that Donald Trump had a role in inciting that? And he just could not answer directly. It was just the lamest answer. And I hope you're right. And I think you are. I think, if we look at the polling, we look at Trump's popularity, we look at where the Republican Party is today, I think people are fed up with all of that. But, only time will tell. This year's a huge election coming up. How are you feeling about the midterms?
Look, I feel good. I think we've got momentum on our side. I represent a competitive and tough district outside Pittsburgh, all the way to the Ohio and West Virginia borders. We're going to win. And I think the writing is on the wall for the Republicans. You see the retirements where I serve in the House. You see the announcements of people not running for re-election. I hear the same rumblings that other colleagues I'm sure have talked to you about. The Republicans are gearing up to be in the minority after this year. I don't take anything for granted. We have a lot of work to do. But I think part of this is, and you were getting at it just a moment ago, people don't want weakness from their politicians. And what I see from so many Republican politicians, they are so afraid of anything that might push back on Donald Trump in this White House. And I think most people, whatever their political views, expect their representatives to stand up for them, their region, their home, their district, their whatever it is. And these Republicans' unwillingness to ever do that with this president, it just shows weakness, and it shows how afraid they are to even step out of line in a moment where we need far more oversight and guardrails around this administration that has had full control since he's been inaugurated. I mean, full control of our government, and they failed on a lot of measures. I'm sure we'll get into it, but that's the message that I see coming out of so many folks is they expect our Congress to push back on the excesses and abuses here, and the Republicans are completely unwilling to do it.
Yeah, it is pathetic. So there was the release of a new horror film this week called Mr. Trump Goes to Davos. I'm sure you've seen it. Give us your review.
I caught bits and pieces. I was in Washington this week. We had votes, and I caught bits and pieces of his speech between things in my office. I don't even know where to begin. We could start, I guess, with Greenland and, the whiplash of he's threatening military force. He's not. He's back and forth on it. It's just crazy stuff. And remember, the NATO alliance, which has proved so central to keeping peace in Europe, keeping Americans out of fighting land wars in Europe, still matters. And our allies who are now continuing to step up to meet their defense spending obligations, to then hear our president undermine it, to put at risk this alliance that's been good for all of our mutual security. As I say, where to begin? Because I think we heard so much recklessness out of this guy on a stage where lots of our allies and adversaries are paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, putting aside how unhinged he was, which to me it's almost worthless to talk about that part because he sounds like that every time he speaks. But he was completely unglued and incoherent. But the two things that struck me the most, because to your point, they were so offensive. One was that when he was talking about how, we'll be there for NATO, but, I don't know if they'll ever be there for us. When the one time Article 5 has been invoked, it was after 9/11, when our NATO partners rallied to help defend us. And, troops from all over the alliance, from all over the world, died in battle right alongside us in Afghanistan. That was number one. Number two was he basically said we won World War II on our own.
I mean, due to lots of our allies. And certainly we won the Second World War, but we had lots of allies fighting alongside us. And to your first point, you were absolutely right. And do you know who really stepped up? One of the most substantial sacrifices on a per capita basis of any of our NATO allies,
Denmark,
were the Danes.
Yeah.
Denmark. They really served and suffered in Afghanistan.
I think 40, something like that. 45 of their soldiers died.
Meeting their treaty obligations to stand up and stand with us. Look, I'm a veteran of Iraq. Plenty of my friends served in Afghanistan. Those coalitions and those allies mattered. And they really, these were not small sacrifices for a country like Denmark and the Danes to put their folks in risk and harm's way with us.
I know you don't have a crystal ball, but this is an important question because it's a concern of everyone. And this was on full display at Davos, in that America certainly is no longer the beacon of democracy and the protector of democratic nations all over the world. The U.S. president is no longer the leader of the free world. The trust and respect for us has eroded, despite what he says. Do you think that's something we can ever get back? Do you think NATO, do you think Europe, do you think the world, our allies, could get back to a place that they can trust us again? Or has something irrevocably been broken?
Look, I'm an optimist. I think America's leadership is not just important, it's something that we need for the world, because the absence of American leadership, who will step in? Communist China, the Russians, bad, dangerous actors who have an expansionist, imperialist view of bullying their neighbors. So the absence of American leadership is not a world I think most want to live in. And I'm someone, again, I'm a veteran of the war in Iraq and the forever wars that my generation had to serve in and fight. I don't want us going around the world fighting wars that we don't need to fight. And yet we still need American leadership. And I believe in it. I believe in the good of the people of this country and what we can do to make the world safer and freer. And so to see us retreat from that, and to see, in fact, not just retreating from it, this president embrace basically the idea that you can take over your neighbors You can invade foreign lands as long as you're stronger than the folks next to you. That's what got us into the First and the Second World War. That a lot of American blood was spilled to change that kind of mindset across the world stage. And we've been, as a result, the world has been less subject to these wars. There's been less bleeding and fighting when America and our friends stood up for the idea that you can't just go invade your neighbors. And I think we have to have that be the norm across the globe.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about domestic issues. We've seen in this past year the just absolute weaponization of the Department of Justice. You yourself are a victim of that. You and 5 other Democrats made a video back in November simply urging or reminding members of the military, the Democrats who made the video, by the way, either are veterans or worked in intelligence, national security. So these are great patriots. And so you made this video just reminding the military that they should not obey illegal orders. And now you're under investigation. Mark Kelly has been demoted and his pension has been reduced. This is beyond outrageous in terms of how you guys are being treated. But we have an out of control, corrupted Department of Justice. What concerns you the most, knowing what we've seen this past year, going forward into 26? Is this something that gets better, gets worse? And where do you stand with your own particular situation?
Let me start with, I'm not going to be intimidated by Donald Trump or anyone else who's going to enforce his idea to punish his political opponents, rivals who might say something he doesn't like. I'm not going to be intimidated. I was elected to do a job. I have a constitutional duty that I understand, so no draft dodger is going to intimidate me. And look, the danger beyond my or anyone else's situation is when you erode the rule of law, when you weaponize law enforcement against political opponents and rivals, you undermine the basic rule of law that we need in this country for order, for there to be security, for there to be trust in judicial and criminal process. And that leads to lawlessness and lawbreaking. Oh, by the way, we're seeing lawlessness and lawbreaking out of this administration. A memo leaks just this week around ICE now telling their agents that they can enter homes to remove people without judicial warrants. Last I checked, we have a Bill of Rights in this country. We don't take kindly to people busting in our doors without an order from a judge to take people. If you had told the founders and the framers of our country that's something that would happen in America, that a president and his administration would support, they might point back to the Bill of Rights and the Revolutionary War that got us the Constitution got us a country in the first place. And so I think a lot of this erosion of liberty, breakdown of rule of law is dangerous. And it, to me, goes back to why I think we as Democrats will win in the midterms. The American people want us to protect the basic rule of law, to have a Congress that stands up for our liberty in the face of this. And Republicans have shown no willingness, and that's generous, no willingness to do any of that.
Well, I know Democrats obviously are the minority party, so there's not a whole lot you can do. And as we've been talking about, your Republican colleagues are they've pledged undying fealty to the king. Is there anything that Congress can do before perhaps a midterm victory by Democrats to rein in this rogue attorney general and the Department of Justice, which is literally just serving as, Trump always said, I want my Roy Cohn. He's got an entire Department of Justice now. He's got the attorney general. That's his Roy Cohn. So is there anything Congress can do about this?
Well, I'll say 2 parts, right? I'm in the House. For us to have a majority to force a vote on anything, right? Whether it's an issuance of a subpoena, whether it's putting real conditions on funding. You saw nearly all Democrats just vote against a DHS funding bill for ICE and others that didn't have those kinds of guardrails. We have to have a few Republicans join us, and so far that just hasn't happened. Now, the other side of that, though, is the Senate has more leverage because of the filibuster, and I would expect and want Senate Democrats to use it to stand up for the Constitution, the rule of law. So whatever avenues they have to do that, they should be using it. And it's not to say we won't fight hard for the majority, but that's a year from now if we were lucky enough to win the elections this coming year. So there's a lot of damage that can be done. There's a lot of work that I think we could do with either a few Republicans coming with us or the Senate aggressively using the power that comes with the remaining filibuster, whether it's on spending bills, oversight, you name it. I think those senators have to step up and use that power.
Yeah, with the margins so thin, they're the majority margin, one would think, whether it's a Don Bacon or a Thomas Massey or just one or two others, to do the right thing would not be such a difficult task. But
yeah. Well, we had a vote yesterday on war powers in Venezuela to direct under the war powers resolution to remove, to stop any hostilities with Venezuela. The vote tied. 2 Republicans voted with all the Democrats.
Yeah.
And it was a tie, which meant the vote failed. So even there, where I think no one would suggest the American people have voted to send Americans to go occupy Venezuela, even there, only two Republicans are willing to vote with us. So, I want us to win the majority. I want us to have a majority that's, frankly, standing up for the Constitution. But I need some more Republicans to step up here as well, because between now and this coming year, there's a lot of damage that could be done.
Yeah. Last question. Talk to me about the Full Cost of War Act. This is something you and Congressman Ted Lieu of California put forth. He's a veteran like you. You reintroduced this bill. Tell us about it and how you're fighting for it.
Simple bill. It says if the Congress is going to vote to send Americans to go fight, you're also going to authorize the money to care for veterans and fully fund the VA. And some history here, whether it's my generation that served in places like Iraq or Afghanistan or the Vietnam generation, you name it, too often we see chicken hawks who beat the drum to war and then penny pinch when it's time to fund the VA. And I think funding the VA, providing the care and benefits that veterans have earned, that's part of paying the cost of war. So this is not some complicated bill. It is one that tells those beating the drum to war, you want to go do this? You better fund the Veterans of Care and the Veterans Administration right now when you do it.
Yeah. Congressman, you used the term draft dodger before. You're my kind of guy. Thanks for coming on and talking about all this stuff, and I hope you come back and chat with us again.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
All righty. Take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhiniecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Lengyel. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Back Room with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.